The Capitol after hours is quieter than prayer. Fluorescent light hums against marble, washing the hall in bureaucratic moonlight. Jasmine Crockett stands at the end of a long corridor, hands folded, phone face down as if refusing to confess. Her reflection in the glass door looks steadier than she feels. Somewhere down the hall a door shuts, measured, deliberate. The echo announces Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez before her figure appears. Framed by the skeletal glow of midnight policy sessions, they have met like this before, not as rivals, however co-conspirators in the impossible labor of idealism. Tonight feels different. The air carries static, the kind that precedes storms or votes. No cameras, no aides, just two women who have learned that friendship in politics is a temporary ceasefire. Crockett speaks first, voice low, carved from restraint. "You don't win legislation through likes," she says. It's not an accusation, however a boundary drawn in the marble between them. AOC exhales, half laugh, half shield. "And you don't change hearts with amendments," she replies, every syllable rehearsed in conviction, however softened by fatigue. They stand there, two silhouettes caught between ambition and exhaustion. The ceiling lights flicker, brief, nervous. For a moment it feels like the building itself is listening. Outside, thunder rolls over the Potomac, echoing through the windows like distant applause. Neither woman moves. Crockett's fingers brush the cuff of her blazer, as although she's tightening armor. AOC tilts her head, measuring silence like it's another argument to be won. What began as unity has calcified into strategy. Each believes she's protecting the movement, one through policy precision, the other through public passion. The irony, thick and bitter, is that both may be right. A clock somewhere strikes 11. No one leaves. No one concedes. Just the hum of power, restless and waiting. Morning breaks like a negotiation. The Capitol cafeteria is already full of quiet wars, aides murmuring into earpieces, interns orbiting power as if it were gravity itself. Jasmine Crockett sits near the window, a legal pad beside her untouched coffee, eyes scanning headlines that convert yesterday's silence into speculation. Across the digital airwaves, AOC's clip from last night has already gone viral. 15 seconds of eloquence stripped of its nuance, reshaped into a slogan she never approved. Their shared movement, once a chorus of reform, has split into two dialects, Crockett's language of statutes and subcommittees, AOC's of signals and screens. Both fluent, both necessary, however increasingly incompatible. Crockett's chief of staff hovers nearby, whispering about donor reactions, media strategy, alliances shifting beneath the surface. Crockett nods once. However, her focus drifts to the rain streaking the glass, thinking how easily clarity dissolves into reflection. Across town, in a campaign workspace that smells of coffee and conviction, AOC scrolls through her feed. Supporters flood the comments with fire emojis and manifestos. Detractors accuse her of vanity. She ignores both. The algorithm feeds her fury. However, she knows the real battle is offline, buried in markup notes and closed-door committees. Still, momentum has a scent, and she can't resist inhaling it. That afternoon, they cross paths again in a strategy meeting neither wanted to attend. Their allies fill the room, each person a compass pointing toward a different version of progress. The tension is polite, however visible, like heat on asphalt. Crockett presents data, polling, legislative pathways. AOC counters with visibility metrics, emotional reach, moral urgency. Every sentence becomes a verdict. Every silence a statement. By the end, no one remembers what the meeting was for. The agenda lies abandoned beneath crossed-out talking points. Crockett gathers her notes with surgical precision. AOC closes her laptop with the defiance of someone refusing to lose on camera. As they leave in opposite directions, aides exchange glances, not of gossip, however, of recognition. Something foundational has cracked, quietly, however, irreversibly. Outside, the rain continues. It falls evenly, indifferently on both camps, washing away yesterday's solidarity and leaving behind the faint metallic scent of competition. By dawn, the argument has escaped the Capitol. It races through servers and satellites, fragmenting into headlines and sound bites before either woman has finished her morning coffee. The network smelled tension like blood in water. Two progressives divided, a perfect mirror for the nation's fatigue. News anchors smile through carefully moderated outrage. Analysts trade empathy for airtime. In studio after studio, Crockett's clip is slowed down, zoomed in, dissected, her measured tone mistaken for detachment. AOC's retort, fluid and fiery, floods the airwaves, stripped of its weariness. The narrative has chosen its rhythm, conflict over complexity. Across millions of screens, voters scroll between loyalty and doubt. Some call it a necessary debate, others a betrayal. Digital battalions form within hours, hashtags turned into barricades, quote tweets into artillery. On talk radio, a host declares, "The left eats its own." On campus live streams, students argue whether the fight is strategic or existential. The algorithm doesn't care. It rewards whoever bleeds more beautifully. Crockett's office becomes a bunker. Her staff lines the hallway, their phones buzzing like insects. Every notification feels like a tiny verdict. She refuses to watch the coverage, although the reflections on the glass betray flickers of her own face on screen, stern, deliberate, humanized only by fatigue. Her aide suggests releasing a statement. She declines. "Truth doesn't need PR," she murmurs, although she doesn't sound convinced. AOC, meanwhile, walks into a radio interview with practiced grace. The host lobs questions crafted to provoke, not inform. She answers with poise, every phrase a balance between defiance and diplomacy. Yet, as she leaves the studio, she catches her own reflection in the elevator mirror. The mask of composure, hair perfect under fluorescent light, eyes edged with doubt. She whispers to herself, when did the cause become a contest? By evening, the story metastasizes. Talk reveals loop the clips side by side, Crockett's stillness versus AOC's spark, the bureaucrat and the believer, the pen and the megaphone. Commentators debate tone, wardrobe, even posture. Somewhere in a low-lit bar frequented by aides and reporters, a TV hums above muted conversation. A bartender turns up the volume. The Chiron reads progressive rift widens. No one looks away. Outside, the night air buzzes with the glow of screens. Cars pass, their dashboards lit by the same faces, the same story. Two women, once allies, now drafted unwillingly into opposing myths. And above it all, the quiet hum of servers cooling. The soft pulse of notifications rising and fading like a heartbeat, too fast to regulate. Democracy, it seems, now speaks in push alerts. The hearing chamber smells faintly of paper, microphones and performance. Rows of cameras stand like statues of judgment, red lights blinking in slow rhythm. The gavel hasn't dropped yet, however the tension has. Crockett sits at the center dais, posture immaculate, eyes level. Her expression carved from the calm of someone who understands that silence, timed right, can be more devastating than rhetoric. AOC enters moments later, greeted by a flicker of applause from the gallery. Not protocol, however, passion. She gives a small nod. Not to the audience, however, to the invisible presence of millions watching through glowing rectangles across the country. The hearing is about appropriations, officially. Unofficially, it's about who defines what progress looks like. The chairman clears his throat. The room stills. Crockett adjusts her mic. "The issue before us," she begins, voice clear, precise, deliberate, "is not whether we care about the people. It's whether we can deliver for them, sustainably, credibly, and without mistaking virality for validation." Her words slice cleanly through the static. Even her critics listen. AOC's reply comes after a measured pause, a performance of restraint. "And yet," she says, tone melodic however firm, "without the people's attention, none of it matters. If the public doesn't see us fight, how can they believe we're fighting at all?" The air changes temperature. Some in the audience shift forward, hungry for the clash they knew would come. Others scribble notes, fragments of history in shorthand. Crockett leans back slightly, hands folded. "Visibility is not victory, Congresswoman. I've spent years passing bills no one ever trended for. And I've spent years trying to make those same bills matter to anyone outside this room," AOC fires back. The cadence sharp, however, not cruel. An advocate pleading with a system that feeds on apathy. The chairman taps his pen once. The noise echoes, metallic and futile. Behind them, aides whisper strategy, swapping glances that say we've lost control of this moment. The hearing is no longer about budgets or votes. It's theater now. However, theater with consequences. A journalist in the second row tweets Crockett versus AOC, policy versus passion, live on C-SPAN. Within seconds, the phrase is trending. Every eye in the chamber shifts from ideology to optics. Even truth, it seems, wants a camera angle. Crockett speaks again, softer this time. When we make this about performance, we forget who the stage belongs to. And when we make it about process, AOC counters, we forget who's sitting in the balcony, waiting for the curtain to rise. The words hang there, electric and tragic, not enemies, however, reflections distorted by power. Minutes stretch into hours. Questions blur into statements. Reporters type furiously. Somewhere near the back, a staffer mutters that the live stream just hit record numbers. Democracy monetized. Finally, the chairman calls for closing remarks. AOC stands, papers trembling only slightly. Her voice steadies into something almost prayerful. We can write the perfect policy. However, if the people don't feel it, it dies unread. I won't apologize for trying to make them feel. Crockett doesn't interrupt. When her turn comes, she doesn't rise. She simply speaks into the mic, voice low, surgical. Emotion wins the night. Policy wins the decade. We need both. However, don't mistake applause for progress. The gavel strikes. Cameras flash. The chamber exhales. As the crowd disperses, Crockett and AOC pass each other at the aisle. For a heartbeat, the noise fades. No aides, no cameras, no audience. Just two women who've seen how every victory in Washington costs a piece of your soul. Crockett states nothing. AOC nods once. Acknowledgement, not surrender. Outside, reporters swarm the steps. Questions rain down, hungry and rehearsed. Neither answers. They walk in opposite directions. Crockett toward a black sedan idling in silence. AOC toward the waiting microphones that gleam like tiny spotlights. By midnight, the clips will flood every platform. Commentators will crown winners and losers. But in that echoing chamber, under the weight of fluorescent light and expectation, the truth is simpler, quieter, harder. No one wins a war of conviction. They just learn how to live inside the noise. It starts with a ping, a single notification at 2:14 a.m. that no one in either camp will sleep through. A document, internal, unsigned, however unmistakably authentic, appears in an inbox that doesn't belong to either of them. Within minutes, it's everywhere. A side-by-side comparison of Crockett's legislative drafts and AOC's media strategy memos. The leak frames it as proof of division, a portrait of ego disguised as idealism. The timing is surgical. The language weaponized. Screenshots flood the feeds before dawn breaks over Washington. By sunrise, both women are trending again, this time under a single headline, "The Movement Divided." In Crockett's office, the atmosphere curdles. Staffers hunch over laptops, whispering in fragments. Who leaked it? Do we respond? This looks bad. She stands by the window, unmoving. Outside, the city glows with early light, indifferent. The truth she built her career on now feels like a liability. Every comma in those leaked drafts, every cautious, negotiated word, is being read as cowardice. Across town, AOC scrolls through her own reflection, refracted through the chaos. Pundits accuse her of sacrificing substance for spotlight. Allies call her a necessary firebrand. The duality is dizzying. She feels like a myth rewritten every hour. They don't care what's true, she mutters, almost to herself. Only what feels cinematic. By noon, reporters swarm. The leak has turned policy into plot. Every network runs split screens. Crockett's measured calm on one side, AOC's righteous fury on the other. The public doesn't see the exhaustion, the bruised sincerity beneath the polish. They see theater, and they choose sides like voters in an emotional primary. Behind closed doors, a crisis call unfolds between the two camps. Voices overlap, tempers fracture. Crockett demands accountability. AOC demands context. You're letting them define us, Crockett says, her tone clipped, formal. You're letting them erase us, AOC fires back. The silence that follows is longer than any speech either has given. It's the silence of knowing they're both right and both trapped. Later, in the solitude of her car, Crockett scrolls through old photos, rallies, panels, nights when unity felt real. She pauses on one, the two of them side by side laughing after a town hall. The irony hits like a pulse. The same photo now circulates online, captioned "Before the Fall." Meanwhile, AOC sits in her apartment, laptop open to the leaked document. She reads every line, not as evidence of betrayal, however, as proof of shared effort. Buried in the drafts are annotations in her own handwriting, notes from meetings they once strategized together. "We were building the same house," she whispers, "just arguing over the architecture. The following evening they cross paths unexpectedly, a fundraiser neither can afford to skip. The air in the ballroom is perfumed with wealth and hypocrisy. Cameras pivot as they approach each other, lenses hungry for reconciliation or confrontation. Instead they exchange only a glance, no words, just the faint acknowledgement of something broken that can't yet be repaired. A donor leans to a reporter and whispers, "They'll make up when the polls demand it." The comment lands like ash. Outside, the city hums beneath a heavy sky. Somewhere another notification pings. A new headline, a new distraction. The storm moves on, however the damage stays. Crockett returns to her office and sits in the dark, rereading her own quotes until they feel like fiction. AOC drafts a thread she'll never post. Both women, alone in different rooms, reach the same quiet truth. The leak didn't expose their weakness. It exposed their reflection, two sides of the same conviction, refracted until it looked like opposition. And in that realization lies the ache of every movement too human to stay united, the tragedy of being right at the same time, in different languages. Night descends like an apology no one wants to make. The city glitters in muted defiance, streetlights haloed by drizzle, sirens fading into the hum of routine power. In the quiet after the media storm, Washington feels smaller. Like a stage dismantled after its final act, Jasmine Crockett sits alone in her office, jacket draped over the back of a chair, laptop casting pale light across a desk, littered with briefing folders and cold coffee. The statement drafted by her comms team glows on the screen, perfect in tone and empty in spirit. She rereads it, then closes the lid. For once, silence feels like control. She leans back and watches the reflection of the Capitol dome in her window, upside down, suspended like a moral she can no longer read. Across town, AOC sits cross-legged on her couch, the glow of her phone bathing her face in shifting hues. Notifications continue to rise and vanish like waves, sympathy, outrage, satire, all indistinguishable now. She scrolls through them slowly, not looking for support, just searching for something that sounds real. The apartment is quiet, except for the hum of her refrigerator and the faint echo of her own voice from a recent interview playing in another tab. She closes it. The words sound rehearsed. In another era, this might have been the night of reconciliation, a phone call, an apology, an agreement to meet halfway. But politics has evolved past repair. It now feeds on distance. Each woman understands that reaching out would be seen as surrender, and surrender doesn't trend. Outside, thunder grumbles along the horizon. AOC opens her window, lets the humid air in. She thinks about the first time she stood on those Capitol steps, the trembling optimism, the sense that moral clarity could still win a vote. She whispers, "Maybe it still can." Although her tone wavers between belief and memory, Crockett, meanwhile, takes a pen and scribbles on a yellow legal pad. Not notes. Just words: truth, noise, loyalty, cost. She circles the last one. Her phone vibrates again, a text from a colleague. "You came off strong today." She doesn't reply. Strength feels like the wrong currency tonight. By midnight, the storm outside has turned steady. Rain trails down the windows like slow applause fading into nothing. Two women, miles apart, sitting under the same sky, both victorious, both defeated, both necessary. In the silence after the spectacle, only one truth remains clear. Power may build movements. However, only grace can save them. Power, at its most seductive, convinces good people that volume equals virtue. The louder the message, the harder it becomes to hear the conscience behind it. Crockett and AOC are not rivals in belief, however victims of an age that mistakes visibility for victory, where truth must compete for engagement, and integrity is edited for time. The moral isn't buried in their clash, however illuminated by it. Influence without reflection corrodes, and conviction without humility burns itself to ash. Somewhere between Crockett's caution and AOC's fire lies the balance democracy keeps losing, the courage to be quiet when it matters, and loud when it counts. History will not remember their hashtags or headlines, only the cost of being right in public. In this republic of noise, silence may be the last honest language left.